Hello and welcome to the Go 24/7 podcast. I'm your host going at it alone today. It's Dylan Sanders. You can find me on Twitter at Dilly Sanders. Bryce is usually joins me for these Sunday night live shows, but he is unavailable to go. So we're just gonna do, a quick hitter pod, talk about some key things from LSU's 34-31 win against Arkansas that I think it's just important to talk about. And then we'll get on out of here. It's Sunday night. Everyone's having fun, celebrating a win. It was a 17-point spread, so it's not maybe not the win that you wanted to see, but it's the win that you got, and it's another win in the win column. And I think that's really all that matters at this point. So yeah, guys, go ahead and leave some comments throughout the stream if you want to, if you want to chime in on the show. If you have any questions, just let me know. Other than that, I think we should go ahead and get into things. Subscribe on YouTube at Go 24/7. Subscribe to our the website board. We have a lot of good VIP content coming this weekend. It was a huge recruiting weekend for LSU. So if you want to get some insight on that, head over to go247.com. But other than that, let's get in the show. So we can start off with the LSU offense. LSU offense started off really slow in this one. It was not it was not looking good. Passing, rushing, heading into the half, it was really bad up until that last drive where LSU started to get it going. And from that drive, LSU's offense came alive and really dominated the rest of the way. Jaden Daniels ended the night 20 of 29 for 320 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and then that interception that happened early on. You had Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors each with over 100, at least 130 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think that's where we'll start with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. You know, we had wanted to see this out of them this season. They're looking like one of the best receiving duos in the country. And we expected Malik Neighbors to look like this. We expected him to look like one of the best receivers in the country. But the question was about Brian Thomas Jr. He's been around for a couple of years and hasn't really put it all together, figured it out, and really gotten to the consistency. There's been flashes where he's had some really nice games. I think this was probably the best game that he's had with the LSU Tigers so far. He finished with 5 catches for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had that one really crazy catch where he like bobbled it to himself, came down, ran it in, ran around a defender, and ran it in for a touchdown. Now that wasn't the best throw, but he adjusted and got the touchdown. And then I think from that point on, Jaden really had a nice day. The numbers might look a little bit better than the performance was, at least from a consistency standpoint. But once they came out of the half, he was making his reads, making his progressions, leading receivers into scoring opportunities, which is really what we kind of saw bite the LSU offense in the first half, where he wasn't leading those guys. They would have to readjust to the ball. It would be incomplete. They wouldn't get the scores that they would have. That all fixed in the second half. So you want to see the second half Jaden rather than the first half Jaden, because if you get that second half Jaden, the offense can go crazy. It can go up here. For the audio listeners, I just made like that stock rising chart. That's essentially what the offense is going to look like if you get Jaden to have these complete performances. He had that complete performance against Mississippi State last week, and then brought it into the second half of this one. So if you can get the first two halves going, this offense looks really good. Jaden's potentially working himself into the back into the Heisman conversation. I don't think he could go over a guy like Michael Penix right now, who's just dominating. But would you be surprised if I told you that Jaden Daniels is top 5 in the country in both passing yards and passing touchdowns? I would be shocked personally because he had 17 passing touchdowns all of last season. He's up to 12 already so far this year. And whenever you get those numbers at the beginning of the year, that confidence really builds. And I think that's really what we've wanted to see from Jaden is confidence because the talent's there with him, but it's pulling the trigger on those deep throws, pulling the trigger whenever you need a big play rather than running. And he talked about that a lot this offseason and how he worked to fix that. And I think that we've really seen that happen. The other thing on offense that I think LSU saw an adjustment, and it's something that we've been saying for a couple weeks needs to happen. They found the running back duo. It's Caleb Jackson and Logan Diggs. That's it. Caleb Jackson only gets 2 rushes in this one, but those 2 rushes look different. I think overall, you really focus with Logan Diggs right now. He just looks different. He looks explosive. He looks like an LSU back. He looks like an SEC back, and brings that consistency that you haven't seen from any other running back this year. 14 carries, 97 yards. That's good. All other LSU backs only got 5 rushes, and Josh Williams had that really big run, the 41-yard run. But it's hard to really count that in terms of consistency. If you get that running game going, which is what we saw in the second half, they got the running game going. They had 29 rushing yards outside of that big 41-yard Josh Williams run in the first half. And the defense was able to sell out on the pass, and it stopped. They stopped the pass. The second half, they get the running game going, and that opens up Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas to be able to make those catches and get open because the receivers weren't getting a lot of separation in the first half either. So second half, running game gets going, receivers get more open. And, honestly, you don't need Malik Neighbors to be that open. We saw him get draped in coverage in one time in one of the plays, and he still came down with the ball. And I think this was overall a better night for the LSU offensive line. They only gave up 4 total pressures in this one, according to Pro Football Focus, which was much better than I think people were expecting going into the night because the Arkansas defensive line has been one of the better lines in the country, but they kind of kept Jaden clean, and that was nice to see. Talking about the other line, the other front 7, the defense for LSU, there were some ups and downs. You saw the cornerbacks not really the secondary as a whole, I'd say, not really live up to the LSU name, which I think is what a lot of people are saying. Want to give a shout out to Denver Harris. Denver Harris is looking good. Denver Harris is looking like he's on the way to being an LSU back. He's still young. He's still learning. He's still growing. But I think he is one of the more promising players on defense right now. Andre Sam is everywhere. He is lighting up the field, making highlight plays. And on the defensive line, who had the best day? Who do you think had the best day? It was actually Braden Swinson. And watching it live, I probably would not have known that or didn't clock it, but he had 4 total pressures, 3 quarterback hurries, by far the best pass rusher that LSU had last night against Arkansas. I don't know if I would have clocked that, but the numbers don't lie. Going into the year, I kind of expected him to be the pass rusher while you have Ovie Ogufo be more of the run defender. And I think that's what we've really seen out of the defense so far. But speaking of run defense, I think one of the biggest question marks that we've had all year, and I think kind of came back to light last night, was some tackling issues. LSU defense had I want to make sure I get the number right because it was a big one. It was 13 missed tackles LSU had last night, and some of that is because of KJ Jefferson's size. But I think this is a recurring issue that LSU's defense has had for the past couple of weeks. So, tackling is hard to fix. Is one of those issues that's hard to fix in the middle of a season. So maybe it's you need to scheme around it. I don't know how you scheme around not tackling people. but it's it's more about getting the guys who are doing the job well onto the field. And I think one of the guys that has really emerged is Whit Weeks. I he was an exciting player in high school, exciting player coming into the season, but one of those guys that you didn't really maybe expect to perform all that much right away. He's gotten 2 starts now, and he just looks fast. He looks kind of like Harold Perkins last year, playing that linebacker role of see ball, get ball, and just disrupting plays. And then whenever you combine his speed and athleticism with the brains of a guy like Greg Penn, I think that makes for a really fun duo at linebacker. One guy that I think we really need to see more of, and I think it's just about getting back to speed. It's Mason Smith. He's finally healthy. He's finally playing. He really doesn't look 100% to me. He had a couple of injuries towards the end of fall camp that maybe those are still lingering, but he's just not making that much of an impact so far. And so that's something that you want to see progress throughout the season, and something that we do have, I mean, at least reason to think that he can have more of an impact than he has had so far in the games that he has played. And anything else stand out on defense? Yeah, it's just tackling. I think that's the biggest thing right now. The secondary is not looking great, but I think they're looking better than they did in week 1. Yeah, I think that's the some progress, I think, across the secondary is what we've seen so far. And then so what's next for LSU? I would say probably needing to lock down and get the ship right, because they have a tough stretch coming up against Ole Miss on the road and then at Mizzou. And you might be thinking, "Ooh, at Mizzou, that's not that scary of a name," but they've had a good year. It's playing in Columbia, Missouri. Weird things happen, and it's really hard to play back-to-back road games in the SEC. So I think a 3-point win against Arkansas doesn't worry me. I know the spread was 17 points. A win's a win. They looked really good last week against Mississippi State. They looked really good against Grambling. The offense moved the ball against Florida State. So, the offense, I think I'm not worried about the offense. I think where this season gets derailed is the defense. And it's just about getting guys ready. Maybe looking at some of the younger guys, Deshaun Womack, not an every down guy yet, but he came up with a sack last night against Arkansas and looks promising. So I think it's finding the guys to play on defense, putting your best 11 out there. And I think they've started to do that some with Whit Weeks. You're seeing Harold Perkins used a little bit more correctly. I don't know if they have really figured it out yet. They got over their problems with Denver Harris and have put him out there. He's performing. So I think that they just need to look at the defensive roster and figure out the guys that are going to put them in the best place to win. All right, guys. So yeah, it's just me today. So we're gonna have a little bit shorter of a show. Oh, what was that? A little gag for our visual listeners over here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Dilly Sanders. Follow the show at Go247 on all the socials. Subscribe to the show. Give us a like on YouTube. And come over to the boards at Go247.com. We're going to have some great content this week and some updates on some recruiting. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.